easily for 6 months we were doing it with no one listening, or maybe like literally less than 10 people.
You can get value out of it if you just change your strategy.
There's no one single day when I think you go, oh, now it's a business, which is a really horrible way to talk about something really fun and creative.
Welcome back to What's the Trick? I am your host, Ben Hanlin, and this is the podcast where I sit down with the world's most creative people and try and understand their creative process. And today's guests are the Pulp Kitchen podcast. I feel like I'm doing them a disservice by saying just a podcast, because they are way more than that. So if you don't know the Pulp Kitchen, they are one of the UK's biggest social channels for all things film. They review films, they talk about films, they talk about essentially anything and everything film. And it's two best friends, James and George. They met together at university and they bonded over their love of film. And over the last few years, they built this platform, and it is a podcast, but also their socials. You've probably seen their videos as well. And now they make a living from all of this. And also they get to go and interview some of Hollywood's biggest film stars. So I've been following their socials for years, and I just really wanted to talk to them because I love their passion. And I wanted to chat to them to figure out, how do two friends essentially get to talk to each other all day about the thing they love? It feels like they've absolutely nailed living the dream there. So I wanted to know how that happens. How do you actually do that? And what is the trick to that? And in this chat, it's very much a chat of two halves. It's very similar to the Owen Cutts episode, actually, because I wanted to find out about their journey and how they've done what they've done, which we do. And then on the second half of the chat, we get really geeky about film. These guys are, and I mean this in the loveliest of terms, and I would say it to their faces, are proper film geeks. They live it, they breathe it. So I wanted to unpick some of the stories behind films that maybe we don't know, the behind the scenes of how things have been made, and also any of their other trivia. And throughout this as well, they also drop a load of great recommendations of things to watch. So get your notepads ready to jot some of those down. Enjoy this episode. Honestly, for any of you that are into film, you're going to love this, and also hear about their passion, their journey. So this is What's the Trick with the Pulp Kitchen podcast. You went to university, leave university, you both get jobs. How did you kind of go from then to where we are today, where this is your job?
So I left university and ended up working in production. I worked in television for a bit, and I left television, went to go work in commercial branded content, was doing that from 2017 into like COVID times. Loved it, still do it to this day, do like commercial branded content. Had like the COVID freelancer panic of like, you know, you are aware of how basically like vulnerable you are to external things, like people wanting to give you work, this shutdown that sort of stopped everyone working for a really long time. We and George had like had this idea of doing a film podcast years ago, and I remember just thinking like, I've got all this camera equipment, I know how to make online video, I know how to edit video. This is such a huge barrier to entry for so many people who want to create content. It's expensive, it's time consuming, it requires a sense of knowledge, and I thought the only thing I think I could talk about every week forever was films. And I remember just like speaking to George and having such a fun time, like genuinely laughing every single day, talking about films. George is like, you know, amazingly knowledgeable on films. He has a ridiculous memory when it comes to dates and who was in what and what film came out when. He's freakishly encyclopedic, but he's an amazing podcast partner.
So pause there. You're doing TV. What are you doing at this time?
I took it sort of like a sort of circuitous route. I left university and I studied film at uni. And then I got a job in film PR for a little bit, which I actually didn't enjoy that much. And then I wanted to get out of that quite quickly. So I ended up just getting, because I was still a young graduate, got a PR job in architecture, which I worked in for 3 years. And then I went in-house at an architecture firm, which I worked at again for another 3 years, doing media-y things like videos and photography and everything. But all the while thinking, I do have a film degree. I should probably use this to something.
And then at what point do you go, let's do this, I'm guessing, on the side, right? Side hustle.
I sent George a voice note being like, listen, like this is the situation I'm in. We'd like obviously like stay in touch. Like we'd see each other a couple of times a year, depending. And I was like, listen, this is what I think would be really great. We'd love to pick it back up. How are you positioned to do it? Do you want to do a podcast every single week indefinitely? It's quite a big ask. I think in my mind, I thought, we need to do this every week. We weren't famous. We didn't have a platform. You've got to really give this thing a go.
Yeah.
And it's a marathon, not a sprint. So it's kind of like, saying what I wanted to do, seeing if George wanted to do it too. And then it was like, sort of, you responded being like, yeah, like, let's chat. And from then we just did it.
I mean, it's that kind of definitely post-COVID thinking from my perspective of just like, why not? Why not? It's just really, why not? And
also, I suppose at COVID, it's the perfect time to sit in your house and do extra new projects because we're not distracted with other things. So you do that and you start making this podcast regularly, and the socials, I guess, kick off. At what point does the balance start to shift that it becomes? Is it now a full-time job for both of you? And what was the turning point there?
It's funny, there's no one single day when I think you go, oh, now it's a business, which is a really horrible way to talk about something really fun and creative. But there's definitely a period where it was a side hobby we did with our regular jobs. And I'd say it, like, easily for 6 months we were doing it with no one listening, or maybe like literally less than 10 people. And we believed in this thing. We were kind of half-assing it at the moment, but it was like, you make a long-form podcast, you put clips on social media that will get more views than the podcast will. Hopefully more people see those clips. You convert 1% of those people that saw those clips into listeners. And I always think there's one moment where I think it really switched, which was we uploaded a clip of George doing a really good Louis Theroux impression on TikTok. And
go on, George.
Come on, George. I'm rusty because I haven't done it probably since that day, and my impression would just be of my impression.
Are you okay, George? Are you okay?
It's kind of right. Okay, so Ben, but what? How does that make you feel, Ben? Ooh, it's just kind of like that. It's a little breathy, but okay. But we did that. You're right. It was just like cracking the door open, just a smidge, enough for like a certain group of people just to discover the podcast, and then that gets the momentum going on the snowball.
Are there like trigger points where if you have so many listeners, or you then start getting some brand deals, and it got to a point where, because obviously this pod has to essentially cover 2 wages as well. Is there we don't have to go into detail of money, but is there a trigger point where you were like, when we got to this level and this much, was it a year in, or?
I think so. We had, in the first 2 years of doing it, we'd had some like these milestones. So that was like obviously a content milestone. And then the next milestone is like being invited to the first premiere that we got to go to, which is like the first time that something we put online that's digital, that's kind of ephemeral, had real life, tangible return. Yeah. You'd be like, I'm here because of this thing that I do online.
Studio being like, like you're important in the influencer, important inverted commas. And so it would be good for you to come to this to cover it. And we were like, oh, really? Yes. Okay. We'll go.
And then I think in 2023, so this is now into like the sort of the second, third year, we started to get interest from brands to do just a few things here and there who weren't represented at that point. And then the growth was really great on socials, like really great exponential growth. And from my perspective, I was in a full-time job as well, who I was very grateful to, who knew about the podcast and were very supportive and would occasionally let me, if I needed to come in late or go home early, that kind of thing.
Really supportive.
They were really great. And I guess you could say it came out to bite them because I left. I thought, I was kind of done in my job. I was very happy there. It was a great job, but I was kind of completed it. And then I thought, let's throw, at the moment we're giving this 20% of our week. If we give it full week, what could happen? And then it's been, again, to add to that snowball analogy since then, and then we get representation and then more brands. And
it's interesting. I had Scott Bennett on the podcast, and he talked about the same thing. He was working a full-time product designer and then going all up and down the country as a comedian till he got such good offers that he knew his schedule that he could quit his job and comfortably do that. Is there a particular thing you had to have in place? Was it views? Is it video views, or is it
different for everyone? And I think it's tough to say, well, if you reach this amount and you earn this much, you'll be fine, because everyone's in a different position. I think it's more about, I think anyone who does social media will tell this, is that there can be quite an eye-opening moment when you go, oh, I gave up 40 hours a week with a job to earn so much, but someone just paid me an amount of money for one video which took me 2 hours to do, which was maybe half of what I used to earn in a month. And even though necessarily you haven't matched your salary yet, it makes you think, and you go, if I really double down on this social media thing, whether it's podcasting, whether it's YouTube or anything, if I could get 2 of those a month or 3 of those, now what's the conversation? And could I match or exceed what I was doing and still have either you go, I can have all my time back, or you can go, I can put more time into this.
And do you have a bit of a master plan? Because obviously,
yes.
Oh, hello. Yeah, you basically
go.
Because there's 2 of you, and you're all doing this, and you're building this community. And then, do you think ahead of, okay, today in 2026 we're doing podcast and a tiny bit of live, but do you have a plan of what could this look like in 3, 4, 5 years? Are you gonna where can it go?
I think I speak for both of us and say that we love what we're doing now, and like we would just love to be able to do it and execute it, maybe at a bigger scale where possible. So whether it's the kind of the space that we film it in, or the size of the venues that we're able to do live events for would be amazing. It'd be great to get into a position where, let's say, we really grew, and then you have, at the moment, I don't know if we've mentioned this on this bit yet because we've been talking off air, but we're produced ourselves. We're an independent produced podcast. But if you have a team behind you who can bring in more regular guests, for example, more talent, that's it's already what we're doing now, but at a bigger scale, I think.
So I guess the dream would be like in a few years' time that you've got these amazing guests that the people you'd love to chat to anyway.
Yeah, that was the amazing thing about 2024 is we kind of started to get access to talent in the junket sphere, which is, if you don't know, it's like the horses and hounds scene from Notting Hill. You get, if you're lucky, like 5 to 10 minutes with talent. It's a revolving carousel of journalists. And so, we're lucky to have been invited to do some of those. And just recently now, like we had Edgar Wright for a whole hour. They gave us a room in that hotel, which was labeled like TV slot, which something like Good Morning Britain and This Morning would have, but we had it to ourselves. It was like, we have it. And then we get to now put those clips in our episodes. So for example, when we did 28 Years Later, Bone Temple, it was like that episode with an interview with Jack O'Connell, who is in it, and it all flows through. And I'm like, that's such a great win for us to be able to have that.
Properly created a location for people to go to who are into film in the UK.
Genuinely providing value and insights. Like, I listen to this podcast, hopefully, with people who I want to hear their opinion. It's like, and it's got an interview with the star about working on it. It's just like, it just adds more value to that episode, which is so exciting for us.
Well, let's talk about those interviews and junkets, because I really want to ask you this question. So you get to sit down, as you say, they're on a conveyor belt. They're the biggest stars in the world, so they're already quite interesting characters anyway.
Yeah.
How do you, in your mindset, you think, I'm going into interview whoever it is today, how do you go in there and get them engaging with you?
Good question.
It is the question, isn't it?
It really depends on who the talent is, what they're promoting, and how long you have them for. Because you could have an amazing A-lister, but you've only got 4 minutes with them. Whereas if you have, you could also have 2 A-listers, but you've got 15 minutes with them, and that's completely different. And I think one of the benefits, the fact that we have this kind of long form, short form approach to our content, is that, for example, the film Anora came out. This was before it won the Best Picture last year, and we had 15 minutes with the director and the star, which is amazing. So that, James and I were straight away, that's a conversation. That's not like a kind of quick fire situation. We use that time there. On the flip side, like 2 months later, I had to speak to Kieran Culkin and Jesse Eisenberg for their movie, but I got 4 minutes that was given. You can't have a conversation about that. And their film was about something, quite serious. It's touching on sort of like legacy of the Holocaust and things like that. So using that as an example, going into that interview, I was like, I can't have a conversation here. I'm going to have to just sort of go for kind of not sort of sensationalist questions, but you kind of want things that provoke a reaction. So I went in with like one serious and one fun. So we did the serious one, which kind of pays lip service to respect to the film. And then the second one was just like, tell me about your travel hacks. But then, they went off and they did a great clip and it actually blew up and did really well. So
you were really worried about it.
I really worried. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. I came out of that junket and I was like, because I wanted to have an hour with them to talk about the movie, or at least 15 minutes. But I learned that just even though you can get a small amount of time, you can get value out of it if you just change your strategy.
They can be tough, because I kind of really like, the more I've done junkets, the more I'm trying to really understand exactly what it is. And it's a legacy format from print media, which is when journalists who were writing about films for articles would sit in a hotel that was comfortable and cozy and just, you'd have 10, 15 minutes, maybe more, to just ask Julia Roberts or whoever it is a few questions that would form the article for the Times, Empire, whoever. All of a sudden, social media happened, video happened, and they've kind of like shoehorned viral video, whether it's now for YouTube or now TikTok and social media, into this format. And I think people have very mixed feelings about, you've got legacy media there, you've got journalists, and now you've got this run of content creators and influencers, and they've got very different objectives within the same format. I think it's still very much like people are still trying to set in stone like who should be doing that and whether or not it works to have a serious journalist and then right next to it you have someone who's just looking for a clip. I think there is a nice balance where like you can find a way to do both, where you get a really good 10-minute interview, but also within that are 2 great clips that hopefully lead people to go there. But I think you realize this is an old school format that's trying to adapt to something very new, and is still they must be successful because there are so many.
Do you have any kind of, in your mind, if you're going in there, do you have maybe you haven't thought about it in this much detail, but any rules of like, okay, my style is and you've said about one, fun, relax, but do you demonstrate early on that you're a fan, or do you demonstrate you've got passion? Because are there any things you do to quickly connect with them?
I think it's always important to show that whether you're going to ask lighthearted questions or have a conversation, you've got to be respectful of the fact this is their work. Yeah. They've done this. It doesn't matter if they're promoting a massive, big budget, silly comedy or something very, very serious. It's like, respect the fact that this is their job and they're working right now. They're sat in this room, and yes, they're a big paid actor,
bored,
but they are bored. So I mean, one thing I always do is I like to go, after you introduce yourself, you say, I'm so-and-so, and congratulations on the film. It just makes them realize that you've seen it and you've acknowledged the fact that they've made something here. And even if we're going for like a question that might sound like it's off topic, you always link it to the film. You always link it to the film to remind the fact you have seen it, and you're respecting the fact that they're promoting something.
Have you ever been in an interview where you've walked in and you can feel that you're like the 20th of the day and they're glazed over?
Yeah, big time.
And then have you ever... Can you remember when it's worked well, where you've asked them a question, you've seen the lights switch on, and you've gone, "Oh, I've got them."
Yeah, you can see a moment where someone I think if you bring energy and fun into a question and they get quite excited, or maybe ideally you don't want to ask them a question they've heard 20 times that day.
Yeah,
so something that gets oh yeah, I didn't think about that, or like that's a funny idea, I didn't think about that, that's fun. And then similarly, you can walk into a room where the energy's just bad. I think we both had just like a couple of those.
Yeah. There's also sometimes you have to recalibrate your expectation where sometimes you'll think you're going to have a serious conversation with someone and they actually want a more fun conversation, which I had with Kieran Culkin, right? On the flip side, sometimes you go in and you're expecting the person to be fun and jovial because perhaps what they're promoting is fun and jovial, but actually they're more serious. Yeah. So you have to adapt to that.
And we're quite lucky, sort of lucky in the sense that like we have no producer breathing down our necks telling us what kind of questions we have to ask.
Yeah.
We're not like editorialized, which some of our peers in the industry who work for, all the major things, they get, but their boss told them they need to ask them about this.
Yeah.
So in some sense,
they also ran another story last week.
You have to ask, and you might not be comfortable asking that question, or it's a joke you don't think would be good to say, or you get in the room that day and all of a sudden like you don't feel it. So in one sense it gives them the structure that maybe they don't have to come up with less. But for me and George, it's like I might ask him this, and George goes, that's a good idea, you should try that. And so we do a lot together. Sometimes just by nature of schedules we do them separately, but like that's all the editorializing we do with each other.
Who's been the best and the worst? Has there been ones where you've walked out and gone, oh my God, I can that person is the best?
We do the best. We'll say the worst on camera. We'll say the worst.
Yeah, that's fine.
I can tell you the story of the worst, but I won't say the name.
Okay, let's start with the best then. Go on.
Okay, well, the best, again, I guess there's many ways of answering that because it's, they're good for different reasons. So I mentioned Sean Baker and Mikey Madison. That was an amazing interview. Really enjoyed them. They were great because we were able to have a proper conversation.
A film we loved as well, which was great to speak to them.
Yeah. But equally, I interviewed like Chris Pratt the other week, and I was late and I had to run there, and it was through the snow, and I was very, very stressed, but he was incredibly gentlemanly and kind and patient, and we had a good laugh. And like, you come out of a lot of these junkets feeling great. And I will actually say most people we interview, I'm talking like 99%, are fine and lovely and nice people, aren't they?
Yeah. So go on. So Chris Pratt, loved it. That's nice to hear. Go on.
So a really great one, which again was just like, I was so excited and happy to have the conversation, was I got Danny Boyle and Alex Garland for 28 Years Later, a writer and director I love and a director I love. And I was like, this is so cool. I had 10 minutes with them, which is a good amount of time. Loved the interview. They like were liking the questions, and we got to put it in the podcast. And it was like, it's 28 Years Later with the director and the writer. I was like, that's just, I'm so happy with that opportunity. And one that was definitely my worst, and I won't say what it was. And I could tell it was bad because other journalists were coming out and being like, this energy's bad.
Well, also as well, you're walking into that. That's not on you, right? You've tried your best, and it's not like they were engaged and then you've asked them a question, they've gone, see you later.
Yeah.
So and then another thing I wanted to talk to you about, so obviously you're working together, and again, something that nobody would see behind the scenes is you've got to collaborate. So you've got to run this podcast, this business together. In general, it sounds, obviously you guys are really good mates. How do you find a way of
when you contractually fell out in 2022?
Yeah, you can't see this.
I will sit next to him.
If you're listening,
I'll tell you the worst person I've interviewed is right there.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, I am in the middle and they are either side of me. A bit like a boxing fight, where
round 3.
This is so obviously there's clearly a vibe. Is what Louis threw. I've noticed there's a vibe. Anyway, so how do you manage that collaboration? Because obviously, naturally, you're not going to agree on everything. Do you have a little system of how you deal with that? Because I find that quite interesting.
I think we don't have no system. We just sort of operate, really. Yeah. I think we have different, styles, personalities, and ways of working. Also, different sort of backgrounds. So, obviously, James has been a freelancer for a long time now, and I spent a bit longer in the kind of corporate office world. So, I have certain, perhaps, I don't know, habits that maybe differ to James's, but neither are
working 5 days a week.
I think it's like neither is correct or incorrect. It's like two different working cultures, but really, I don't know. It kind of melts away when you're in the crucible of actually creating and recording. It kind of melts away because we are independently produced and we are dependent on each other to get this thing out. It doesn't, it's like however it gets done, we just make it happen.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to obviously we were friends. We are friends, but we were just friends. And then all of a sudden, again, there's no single day when you go, this is a business now.
Yeah.
But there's sort of you have to have an enormous amount of respect and consideration for everything George wants and needs from running this thing. And I think it's with the intensity that we make content and how many things we do, and we speak to each other every day, 5 days a week, and often that is recorded. And so I've always thought in general, considering what we do, we get on really well. We laugh all the time. We're never faking having fun on the show. But with that, you do sometimes go, well, let's have a conversation. Do we agree with doing this? And I think we negate that by always talking about the direction of the show. So I generally feel like we're really well aligned on what we want and what we want to do. We have I think fairly regular check-ins of what do we want to do for the next 6 months? How do we feel about the next year?
Yeah, exactly.
And I would always advise anyone who goes into business with any business partner, but a friend, is just have respect for what they want to do and where they're at, and just do your best to serve yourself and that other person.
Yeah.
But there's no easy way to make that work. It's full on. I'd always say that about podcasting. It was my impression at the time, and I think it remains the same, is that if you're lucky enough to already have a huge platform, for example, Louis Theroux does semi-regular podcasts, and he does 10 episodes at a time. He gets amazing guests, and he doesn't need to do the long year-long slog because he already has a platform. But if us, you started, none of us had been doing social media. I do think the game is in turning up every week, creating that regularity for people to be I want to know what the new film, what's going to happen in the new film. I'll tune in every week.
Yeah.
And I think we're really lucky. We podcast about a really active category, which is films and TV shows. And I'm so relieved that mostly new films come out every week.
Yeah, and it's all hugely relatable, trendable. There's all these things going on. It's all been spoken about, isn't it?
Which makes it easier for us to go, what the hell are we going to talk about this week? It's I'm obliged to see this film this week, and we'll talk about it on the show, which is a really transactional way to talk about it. But
here's a question. Even though you didn't start that long ago, but things are constantly changing. If you were to start today from scratch and you were still working an architecture job, you were still freelancing, you'd to phone each other up and go, come on, let's do it. How would you go build this thing again now? What would you double down on that you've learnt from, or what would you avoid that you've learnt from? Just how would you do it differently at all? Or would you just do exactly the same?
It's so hard because I guess our knowledge now applies to the scale we're at in a way. So if I was to say to James and George, who've never made an episode before, you need to be putting out 3 episodes a week. You need to be putting out 1 to 2 socials a day. You need to be
quit your job.
You need to quit your job and all that stuff. They wouldn't start. They wouldn't make a dent. I think in a way, I would say to them probably what we said to ourselves at the time, which is be consistent and don't, put minimum 1 episode out of a podcast and just try and put something on social media at least every day. Okay. And just start with that and keep both of those channels active. And soon enough, you'll discover your audience and then respond to that and shape your content around that.
Yeah. Consistency has always been the play.
Hello, this is Ben, and it's a short commercial break. But for regular listeners, you'll know it's not a commercial break because I got no sponsors. So it's me just having a quick chat with you for a minute before we dive back in. So first of all, this is the Pulp Kitchen. They're just a lovely couple of guys, aren't they, that are following their passion. So if you want to support them, by the way, you can follow them, the Pulp Kitchen, on social media. Their videos are great as well. So go and give them a follow. And also go and listen to the podcast, the Pulp Kitchen podcast, wherever you get your podcasts from, so we can support and see their journey grow. And also, I suppose, as it is my podcast and it is my advert, I might as well tell you, you might be thinking, what is Ben doing other than interviewing people all the time? I'll tell you. I'm basically at the moment doing a lot of corporate events. I do, over the last week or so, I've hosted an awards. I've performed after dinner entertainment for a very large bank in London. And often as well, I'll do a keynote. And the keynote is something really special. I talk about human connection and communication because as a performer and doing this, that's what I have to do. So if that's of interest and you want to find out a little bit more, all of that is on benhanlin.com. That's benhanlin.com. And you can see the kind of things that I do for money. There you go. There's no nice way of putting that, was there? Right. And then also, let's talk about the pod. The last few weeks, it's blown up a little bit. The Owen Cuts episode, we put a clip up on social media about Vivaldi, and somehow we tapped into classical music algorithm, and we've had loads of new people listen. So if you're one of these people, if this is the first time you're listening to any of these episodes, thank you, welcome. Please spread the word. Hit like, hit subscribe. We release an episode every week. So if you do hit subscribe, you'll obviously never miss the next episode. And we have got, I'll be honest with you, some really good ones coming up, which I'd love to tell you about, but I can't. And then also as well, over the last few weeks, we had Owen Cuts. He was all about music. And we had Amelia Sordell last week, which was all about personal brand. So a totally different take on creativity there. That's really well worth a listen. I thought it was a really interesting chat. But one last plea, as I always do, is obviously hit subscribe. That really helps. If you've can give it a review, that helps. But if you see any of my social videos pop up and you want to just hit share on your stories, that really helps as well. And my main thing, and I say this every week, and if you can just do this one thing, this will become the biggest podcast in the world. Move over Joe Rogan. If everybody just shares this with one person on WhatsApp and says, hey, I've been listening to this thing, I think you might like this conversation. So if you know anyone who's a film buff, who loves their film, just bring out your phone now, ping them this episode and see if we can get them on board as well. That'd be incredible. And also every week I do say DM me, because I respond to every single DM that you guys send me and I will send you one back. So if there's anything about this episode you're liking, just drop me a message. Let's have a chat about it. It's nice to know that you lot are actually listening and we can get a chat going as well. So that's enough from, God, I'm a bit needy, aren't I? Right. That's enough from me rambling. Let's get back in to What's the Trick with the Pulp Kitchen. Let's change subject. Let's go to talk about the film industry.
Great.
So,
lovely.
Hopefully this isn't a negative start, but for those that maybe aren't as tuned in, where is the film industry at in general? Because and if you want to be specific more about cinema, because I grew up going to the cinema, what's going to happen? Where are we at?
James, go ahead.
We talk about. I mean, like, interesting. If you're going to talk about 2025, 2026 now, it kind of comes with this like post-COVID strikes baggage context, I'd say, whereas like the last 5-6 years have had these cataclysmic disruptions and influences, and just recently the whole Netflix Warner Brothers thing is changing the landscape of cinema. So,
sorry, how is that Netflix Warner Brothers thing going to change for those that aren't up to date with that?
Well, so the deal hasn't gone through, but it could go through, and if it does, it might not take effect for like a year or so. But for those who know, Netflix is going to buy Warner Brothers, which would mean that they would own a lot of IPs. But the worry that a lot of people have is to do with like release windows for basically for cinemas as a physical space. So although Ted Sarandos, I think, has come out and said he wants minimum 45-day release windows, there's rumors that they might want 17. And obviously what that does, if you have a film that comes out on 1 week and then it's going to be on Netflix within 2 weeks, your audience are going to go, why am I going to pay $20, $25 to do that?
And the challenge I think we've sort of seen in the last 4 or 5 years is that, how do you entice people to go to the cinema when at home they have access to every TV show and every film ever made on a probably quite a good TV that they didn't have to spend loads of money on? what is it that you do to get them to go into the cinema? And so what I think the response has been in these success stories of the cinema, if I'm to think very positively about it, is that filmmakers have really doubled down on the large format IMAX experience. Show them something they literally can't get in their own homes.
So if they've got big, we go bigger.
We go big. It's like, oh, if you didn't see it on the bigger screen, you didn't really see it. Or like, oh, it's that movie, the Star Wars, the moment with the crowd, the fan moment, comic book films, Christopher Nolan, Denis Villeneuve, all of those really big format films, they've doubled down on. And that's great for really big filmmakers and studios who can put $200-300 million into a film. That's there. You've also had this great success story with low budget horror movies where somebody goes, studio says, look, we can take a risk and fund this horror movie for 20 million, but if it makes money, the profits are so much bigger for what we put into it. Right. But what's happened is that the mid-budget, mid-tier film has disappeared, and studios aren't willing to take a sort of average risk for an average reward. So that's why you just don't see rom-coms, comedies, full stop, sort of like we do have great sort of like art house, great sort of love story indie films that make it to the Oscars. There's things that do break through, but so many of these are just basically not being commissioned. And right now you'd say in Hollywood, it's action, comic book and horror. And that's all that's being made. And that's like the sentiment coming out of LA. So it's become very risk averse, very specialized and very specific.
And the flip side, I'm watching TV series that are good TV, okay TV series, but I don't need to watch 8 hours of that narrative. They could have given me a 90-minute, 2-hour film and it would have been brilliant.
Yeah.
But it feels like TV has also taken the stories that film would have had.
They've taken a mid-budget category. Yeah, there are definitely TV series that 30 years ago in the 90s would have been, probably like the 8th highest earning film of the year, would have cost $50 million to make, and, would have starred, I don't know, like Christian Slater, and it would have been a decent business proposal.
Yeah.
But
like, especially thrillers and things like that, where there was a like, look at Seven, right?
Yeah.
If Seven was made today, that would be a 10-part series, and it would be crap compared to give it me in 2 hours with Brad Pitt. And
that's like a problem with like a TV and film. We love TV. There's obviously amazing TV shows, but the TV experience inherently is less protected and sacred than the cinema experience.
Yeah.
Taking yourself away from your home, going into the dark box, hopefully having your phone off, hopefully everyone being quiet, and just losing yourself and relinquishing yourself to this catered experience, which again, it should be good, because if a cinema's not being good, then you're losing the point. Versus TV, and like we've all had amazing moments where you've been totally locked and sucked into a TV show. But I don't even have kids, and I don't even like I wouldn't say I'm that busy, but my phone is buzzing all the time. If somebody walks in, we got to do this. It's not like a truly immersive space. And so I think like the more that we take people away from that, the more this TV box just becomes like an ever-ending roll of content, which maybe we don't have to make it that engaging, because if people can't watch it whilst they're also being distracted, maybe we don't make it at all.
Well, did you hear what Matt Damon said that they're doing with scripts?
Yeah. Because the second screen.
Yeah, so for those that didn't hear it, Matt Damon a month or two ago said they're now asking people when they're writing scripts for films to reiterate the point of the plot 2, 3, 4 times, because they know that the person at home on Netflix is also looking at their phone. Yeah. So now we're having to essentially solve that problem by just dumbing down the script.
Fundamentally changing the way that the stories are being told and the type of work that's created.
Well, let's quickly talk about the Oscars. So I do this thing every year where I don't really keep up with what's going on too much, because I've got 2 young kids again, so it's kind of fallen out my priorities. But I see the list of the Oscars, and I go every year, I'm going to watch every one of them. Yeah. Obviously, that's what you got to do. And I watch probably none of them. So I tell you what, and I bet you the people listening are going, I'm probably in the same boat. So let's make it really easy for people. If there's one film on the Oscar list at the moment that they only watch that one thing right now this year. Now we've got you going.
So we're currently thinking as of today, it's early February, that we think Sinners is probably going to win Best Picture because of the momentum, the number of nominations. We've kind of found like it's a people's vote.
Yeah.
So I could come out with a very, very popular film.
Not one of those Oscar films that's made to win an Oscar, essentially.
No. Yeah, it was really just sort of made. That was a mid-budget success story as well. I think it was made for 90 million. And Ryan Coogler, who's the director, only got really permission to make it because of the huge success he'd had with Black Panther and those Marvel films. Obviously, like, had a connection with Michael B. Jordan and brought that all through. So it's really nice to see that have done well. In terms of being part of the conversation, I'd say maybe you want to see Sinners, and it's being re-released in cinema, and that one, maybe if it does win Best Picture, you can go, that's the film.
I think it's proven to be very popular with such a massive audience that your likelihood is you'll get something out of it.
So it's the kind of thing that almost anyone can watch and and enjoy it, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's proven that. Yeah,
Sinners.
success. Yeah.
Right, that's it, done. Simple answer. And whilst we're talking about films to go and see, I want to ask you a question actually about the most underrated films, the films that are out there that we could all watch on Prime, on Netflix, or wherever, or buy them, but very few people. I'll even start, for me, it's The Fundamentals of Caring, which stars Paul Rudd. Very few people have seen it. It's on Netflix. It's brilliant, and I love that, right? So, first of all, obviously, I'm guessing you guys have seen it.
No, actually, I don't think I've seen it.
Do you even watch films? What are you even doing with it?
I know exactly the thing you're talking about, and Craig Roberts.
But it's one of those where it's brilliant, but no one's heard about it. So go on, what is out there that if I was to call you and go, I'm on Netflix, what do I watch?
So there's generally so many, and we love to.
It's our favourite. We like to ask other people it as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. An underrated film that James and I love, which is on Prime, which people kind of overlooked, is 13 Lives.
Love it. It's on my list.
Yeah,
so good.
Which is about the the Thai boys who were stuck in the cave with the flooding.
Documentary.
No, but
there is a documentary.
Yeah,
this is the film.
The film.
It's really. I've seen it 3 times now. So I saw it once, loved it. Watched it again because I really thought I loved it. Showed my partner it, and she also loved it. It's got Viggo Mortensen, Joel Edgerton. Who else is in it now?
Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell. They all and all these actors disappear. It's very, very normal and realistic, and it's just a wonderfully detailed and heartwarming story, a genuinely incredible story, and so good at demonstrating exactly what the anatomy of this cave is, how difficult and how dangerous this situation was, the rallying together of the people to get it done. And I think it's absolutely brilliant and a real gem.
And do you know what? That great cast, never heard of it.
Honestly,
no, we should, right? Because that's what I wanted.
It's on Prime. And it's on Prime. Watch it on a TV. Like, it's really good. And if there's something really like matter of fact about it, which I find really, really good. It never sort of like valorizes and makes heroes out of these ordinary people, but by not doing that, you go, these people are amazing, which I think is really, really good.
Great. Go on then. What else we got?
I think ones that like came out since we've been doing the show, which I think is a really misunderstood and mismarketed film, was The Last Duel. And the reason I mention it is because it's got an incredible cast. It's got Matt Damon and Ben Affleck in it, Jodie Comer and Adam Driver. And the concept is quite weird. And I think because it was mismarketed, I think it maybe got wrongly criticized for trying to tackle something. And it's a medieval multiple perspective drama about an allegation of sexual assault between 2 knights who have to now duel to decide who was correct in their allegation. And it's really, really interesting. It was marketed as like, it's Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, it's like swords with knights, and it's not really an action movie. It's a really sort of like unnerving study of consent and he said, she said. That's kind of weird when I say it out loud. And I think maybe the sentiment at the time was like, you've shoehorned this very modern pressing issue about consent and, somebody saying one thing but believing another, and you put it into a medieval knight setting. But I think it's a Ridley Scott film. I found it really interesting when I went to go and see it. I was talking about it for a few days afterwards because it really stuck with me. Great performances, great actors. Give it a go.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about, if we can, creativity in films. So we talked about, obviously, your origin story and things like that. What are the cool stories behind some of the films that we know?
A cool recent one that came out when Gladiator 2 was coming out. People were obviously like revisiting the first one and talking about how that got made, which was I think like almost a universally loved film. It was like every dad's DVD. Yeah, like everyone watched it on DVD.
It was like the first DVD.
First DVD. Everyone had the DVD, and it was a great film. And I think so many people like revisited it and rewatched it, and it was just known to be great. And what came out, I think, when Russell Crowe was doing interviews about it, and he would just say, like, for the majority of the filming of that film, they didn't have a script. They literally, they said the script was rubbish. They didn't have it. And Russell Crowe said there were multiple days where they had 500 extras dressed up in armor and swords and sandals ready to go. And he would be kneeling with Ridley Scott, rewriting the script that day. And that was happening multiple times. Of a film which, isn't sort of the most complex script, but it's not. But you wouldn't say it's been badly written. You would say, yes, it's a really beautiful, redeeming story of a gladiator who's made a slave and rises up to become, and it just makes you think, it looks so slick and looks so polished, and what a great end result. But they were struggling, making it up, going, I don't want to say this, that's a bunch of shit, let's rewrite it, let's do it now.
Obviously, I'm sure you've had loads of people say about how when they made Jaws, the shark was broken, and there was ended up being the best problem they could have because it made it scarier, because they couldn't show the shark as often. It was like Spielberg's miracle, even though it was the worst shoot he'd ever done. He gave him PTSD. But actually, it was the best thing that could have happened to him.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is well, you're my first. You were saying I have other people. This is the first film one we've done, guys.
Oh, well, I feel like, if you talk about creativity, I feel like in that, it's like, that's now become the kind of stock lesson for people with all kind of creativity about Spielberg making Jaws.
Did he copy that for Jurassic Park or something like that? Because with the Tyrannosaurus and not seeing that.
I think that's that. I don't know if he copied it, but like that's definitely like applying. There's kind of like a law of showing monsters from like B movies where like you meant to show a foot first, then you show a claw, and then eventually show the reveal. But maybe he's plagiarized something himself with that movie.
Yeah.
But with Jaws, he, for those who don't know, it was like he was 26 and he was shooting on the open ocean, which they told him not to do. It had never been done, and he soon found out why, because it's hard to steady the boat. They get boats in the sight line. You couldn't. It's not like now you could easily just sort of digitally get rid of those. And the shark they designed, the mechanical shark, had been made in fresh water, but as soon as they put it in the salt water, it just sort of packed up. And he had the studio breathing down his neck. They went like, I think something like 55 days over schedule, which is crazy. But the brilliance is that because they couldn't use the shark as often, the shark remained a mystery in the film, and then they could only use sort of little flashes of it here and there. And anyone who's seen Jaws will know that's just the true genius of it.
Always with like limitations and restrictions when like really great creativity and resourcefulness comes out, which I think.
And they say in horror, and it kind of works in anything imaginative, like your brain can imagine things way worse than what you can actually show them, right? Yeah. So just let your brain fill in the gaps.
It says necessity is the mother of invention. It's that kind of idea. Or there's a line in Sunset Boulevard where he's a screenwriter, and someone says to him, don't worry, like some of the best works of literature have been written on an empty stomach. So it's that kind of thing about limitations can derive the best thing. Yeah.
Another one I really like, which now I see it, I don't unsee it, is Spielberg again. During Raiders of the Lost Ark filming, specifically when they were in Tunisia, there's a famous scene when Indiana Jones is squared up to a guy with a whip. And instead of going into this it was meant to be a choreographed whip fight between the two. And instead, Indy just gets out a gun, shoots him, and gets on with his day.
Which is the funniest moment of the film.
Which is so funny because you think you're about to have this really cool combat fight. And the reason that they cut that is that the entire crew got wiped out with severely bad food poisoning from like dysentery.
Oh, really?
And it was like an absolute write-off of like crew, Harrison Ford, all the actors, everyone literally running to Portaloos in Tunisia, which I can't imagine were very good.
God,
like evacuating their bags, like truly like horrifying. Yeah. As John Rhys Davies apparently was so sick he lost like 3 stone during the filming, and it was like really bad because he looked really different. Spielberg only managed to save himself by eating cans of SpaghettiOs that he had shipped to set, and that's why he managed to not be sick. And you now can see that the reason they cut this fight scene is because nobody had the heart or the stomach literally to make it happen. And now when you watch that shot and you see Harrison Ford like sweating in the sun, just exhausted, he's pulled this gun, you know that he's really, really suffering. And there's this wonderful nugget of like, you go, God, those poor people just trying to get through the day. But it turned out to be one of the great moments, great like personality check for who Indiana Jones was, and being a little bit like casual and swashbuckling and last minute.
And you know what? It's exactly that. Like they had to pivot on the spot and if they'd have just made a whip scene or a fight scene, would we be talking about it now?
No,
would we have remembered it 30, 40 years on? But that, they just forced them to come up with something to the point. Did the job. That's great.
Makes sense. Like he's got a gun.
Yeah.
Go, done.
So I tell you what, let's move on. I'm going to ask you some impossible questions.
Okay.
They're impossible because you can't really answer. There's no right answer, but you're going to say, I can't answer that. But go on then. I'm going to ask you anyway. Greatest acting performance ever?
Well, this is why it's timely you asked this, actually. This is a very hard question, but I'm just going to refer to something we talked about on the show. So have you seen Hamnet? Hamnet. This is one of the Oscar movies that's out at the moment. Okay, so Hamnet, which is out at the moment, which is a film with Jesse Buckley and Paul Mescal. So it's a sort of fictionalized account of Shakespeare and his wife and their family, and they suffer a loss, and it's kind of how they recover from that. And it's based off this best-selling novel. But anyway, Jesse Buckley in that film, which came out a few weeks ago, in my opinion, delivers a generational performance, and I do think it's one of the best I've ever seen. And I'm not used to doing hyperbole. I don't like to do it. And I said to James, like, this happens every awards season. People like to overhype things, and get disappointed. But this is genuinely the real deal. It's funny you asked that question about one of the best performances of all time. I go, well, now it's Jesse Buckley doing that, and also up there with like Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood, or Phantom Thread actually is also amazing. But or Jenna Rowlands in A Woman Under the Influence.
No Country for Old Men.
Javier Bardem, right? But he's also amazing in that as well. But yeah, so just to keep it topical, I would just throw Jessie Buckley straight on the top of the pile.
Wow.
So Hamlet's worth seeing. It's really, really good.
What would yours be, James?
Yeah, I mean, I've written Daniel Day-Lewis in anything, but Phantom Thread in particular is what I like, because it's like maybe a little bit less seen, but it's so particular and silly and funny and serious. Like, it's a really, really fun, silly film. I think when I think about who are like the very best actors working today, I think about someone like Leonardo DiCaprio, which is again tricky because he's great in so many different films. And if I think about one performance, I'm like, well, he won the Oscar for The Revenant, but he's so good in Wolf of Wall Street and he's brilliant in this. But if I pick one, I think his performance in Catch Me If You Can, I think is a similar generational performance where he sets sort of like the precedent for this like young actor. And you see someone like Timothée Chalamet really trying to sort of toe down that same path. But when I rewatch that film, and I'm in this habit of rewatching Spielberg films and going, no, that's the best Spielberg film. But I think him in Catch Me If You Can in particular is when you go, that's why he's the very best.
Great.
It's probably his best.
Do you know what he's great in? Basketball Diaries.
I've seen it. I know of it, but
he's from memory. I haven't seen this for decades.
Young ones, yeah.
He's very young, and I think he becomes a drug addict, heroin addict, and it's not pleasant, but his performance is unbelievable.
I also always go for Tom Hanks and Captain Phillips, specifically the ending. If you know, you know. It's like so heartbreaking, and that scene is so effective because you really stop feeling like you're watching a film. You really feel like you're watching a real scene of someone who's been through a trauma, being received by medical professionals after such an ordeal, and just watching the sort of the ordinary matter of factness of it, and Tom Hanks just being the absolute best, and seeing him slowly be in shock. It's just so brilliant. Like, that is probably one of the best Tom Hanks scenes ever. And it's impossible to not get emotional when you see that moment and just go, that's a brilliant film. That's a brilliant actor.
That Captain Phillips is that. Yeah, I know exactly the scene you're thinking about because it sticks with you, right? That's the scene I remember for the film. And Tom Hanks, if I had to, I'm not going to ask you who do you think the greatest actor, but for me, body of work, the Tom Hanks collection for me, he's just brilliant.
You should get him on the pod.
Do you know what? He's actually coming in next.
Tom,
we're overrunning, so just stay out there.
It's in hair and makeup.
He's gone for a run. Right. Again, best director of all time. I know. I told you they're impossible questions.
Spielberg done.
Spielberg.
Yeah. I guess,
I thought one of you was maybe going to say Tarantino or something like that.
No, I was thinking about maybe Scorsese, but I think that the reason Spielberg often pips it is that it's kind of more accessible and more broadly universal, his films, whereas Scorsese's films are meaner, darker, nastier, incredibly talented, incredibly just, I love hearing talk about cinema, but Spielberg is the kind of definition of a Hollywood movie and what movies can do for a lot of people. When they think of cinema, they think of Spielberg.
And the final one of these impossible questions is, it's not as hard probably as the others, is best film franchise.
They all run themselves into the ground in the end, don't they?
I'm not a huge franchisey person, which was something I realized recently when we were talking about the show. I was like, actually, but just going for pure nostalgia, child appreciation of cinema, it is only Star Wars.
So I'd say I agree with you in terms of like where the core of the heart is.
Yeah.
But the fact that it does so much damage to itself, I think almost like negates it. So if I'm looking for a really clean franchise that is sort of the least affected by trying to rinse all the blood out the stone, I think if you just look at the Dark Knight trilogy, which I understand is DC, which has a larger franchise, so I'm just going to choose 3 films as its own contained thing. It probably is the highest quality outside of the original Star Wars films, and I go, that's a pretty good bet. But I think despite the MCU being so mixed and varied and the quality ebbs and flows and there's controversies and it's obviously like, refusing to die, you can't not give it its flowers for the moments that I've had in cinema with that film. And I think, you can look at, for better or worse, this era from, I know it started in 2008, but from all the way through the 2010s, the dominance that the MCU had in cinema and what it did for nerd culture, you have to go, that is one of the greatest cinematic achievements ever made.
Right, we're going to move on to my final Fast Five. Are you ready for the Fast Five?
Oh, God, let's do it.
So there's 2 of you, so we'll have to be even faster.
Oh, God.
First question, actually, is always the same, but you'll appreciate this. It's the Highlander question.
Yes.
Where in the film Highlander, as you know, probably, that they can, when they kill another immortal, they steal their expertise and their skills. So you can keep this alive. But if you could steal anyone's skills or expertise on the whole planet, who would it be?
Oh, the whole well, it related to film. Right.
No, it's just you can steal anyone's skills or expertise.
I'm going to steal someone who's sadly no longer with us. I would steal Robin Williams' impression to jump between characters and impressions. When I watch that guy work, or even just like this, the times he's done like his Inside the Actors Studio, which is like this incredibly chaotic explosion of Robin Williams. I'm like, he is a generational comedic talent and voice. And I'm like, you have this insane ability to embody things, move to different characters. And even though it's all nonsense, I'm like, I know exactly what you're doing. I know what character you're playing. And I think he was like a one of a kind master. Love Robin Williams.
Right.
Oh God! I thought it would be related to film.
You could do film.
You know what I was saying? I think,
and you can do film and then become a filmmaker if you want.
You know, that's it. Because like I'm not too technical as a person. And I think I'd love to absorb the technical ability or the technical dexterity. If you took someone like Christopher Nolan, I just took his technical dexterity and knowledge and experience and way with cameras and film technology, or any great cinematographer, then I feel like that kind of fills in a blank that, funnily enough, I don't have.
Christopher Nolan. All right, Robin Williams, Christopher Nolan. Two good answers. Right, next one, time capsule. We'll keep this film based. The mythical they are getting rid of every film ever made. You get to put one film in a time capsule to keep forever for people in the future. What film you keeping?
So I think you've got to go for something that's kind of like a universally loved film, like a perfect film, and also maybe something that kind of connects the past and the future and the present. I'm going to say Toy Story 3, because it's about leaving things behind and leaving things to the future and sort of the changing of the generations. And yeah, I think that's perfect.
Right. Go for... Is humanity destroyed in this scenario?
I love how you've credited
it is Wall-E.
Wally's a really good shot.
I mean, this isn't like Project Hail Mary or anything. No, it's like, it's whatever you want it to be.
The Matrix is a great shout because it has a great explanation for what we assumed civilization and humanity was, but has the fall of man, and it's a fucking cool action movie.
Yeah.
I like the idea of something like iRobot, underrated fun film.
Yeah, underrated movie. Yeah.
I think could be quite relevant given Elon Musk's plans to have the walking robots with everyone. And not a bad film, it's good fun.
You know
iRobot,
iRobot, right? Will Smith?
That's it. Yeah. iRobot. Yeah, he's chasing him on the casting. I remember that. Because he goes rogue, doesn't he? One of the robots.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Underappreciated film. I'd go for something like that. Yeah, I think like if it's time capsule and it's for something to be saved, you want something with like a sense of real humanity in it.
Gosh, you've really thought about it. I thought you were just going to go, my favourite film is Happy Gilmore. Done. Fine.
School of Rock.
School of Rock. That came out of nowhere, yeah. Fine. All right. Next one, Culture Vulture. It might be a film, but we talked a lot about films. What is the one book, film, anything you've experienced lately that you've loved?
I'm reading a book at the moment about the Oscars, actually. It's called Oscar Wars by a journalist called Michael Schulman, and it is really, really interesting, but very, very readable. It's very sort of pacey and a little bit gossipy, but it basically is a history of Hollywood told through the lens of the Oscars every year. And there's an interesting chapter, just pulling one as an example, of the 1990s and how it was basically Spielberg versus Weinstein and all the sort of dark, obviously Weinstein dark figure, obviously, but the sort of political machinations within the film industry that he used to achieve the Oscar wins that he eventually got. It's really, really interesting and fun. And I encourage people to go check that out.
That's called again?
It's called Oscar Wars by Michael Schulman.
Oscar Wars, right.
I've said this so many times because it can't be said enough. Ripley on Netflix, I think, is the greatest TV show Netflix has ever done. It's based off The Talented Mr. Ripley.
I've never watched it.
Have you seen The Talented Mr. Ripley?
Yes, and I've read the book.
Oh,
you'll love this.
You are going to love this.
Yeah.
It's in black and white, which I think would almost be like criminal to extract the colour away from that story. But once you realise what they're doing and you realise how good this show is, I started watching it and I was like, this is amazing. Why is nobody talking about how amazing this is? And I couldn't stop watching it. It's addictive. It's quite monotonous, but in this way that is like meticulously and agonisingly detailed. And it just builds layers and layers of mystery and just like tension and stress. It's so good.
Who's the main guy in that?
Andrew Scott.
Right, yeah.
Top actor. Everyone in it is brilliant. It's all in sort of like 4:3 in black and white. It's shot on film. I was like blown away that more people aren't talking about it. We're both huge fans of The Talented Mr. Ripley, and I'll admit I watched it with my arms folded, being like, oh yeah, you're going to do this again. So glad they made it. It's one of the best things Netflix has made, and more people need to watch it.
And tying it back to the beginning of the pod when we're talking about our audience and emails, one of the joys we have is when people will send in an email and say, oh, by the way, I hadn't heard of Ripley, but I've gone and seen it on your recommendation, and I really, really loved it. That's such a great moment for us.
Oh, that's good. Right, moving on to my magic wand. I've bought 2 wands today. You both get a wand each. You get to make one thing from the world of film vanish forever. Can be anything you want.
I'm going to wish that they vanish the sequel to Joker that came out.
I've not seen it because I've heard it's so bad.
It is really bad. I really hold that the first Joker is a really interesting and unsettling and quite, it's a disturbing film when you think about what it does for the perspective of what you're watching, who you're rooting for, and what that character eventually goes on to do in a very, it was always telegraphed that was going to happen in a shocking way. And it was really obvious that they had one idea, and it made so much money that they were like, we're going to do a sequel and shoehorn it in. And with most of these stories about, franchises and people just running stuff into the ground, is that money gets in the way. They just sort of slightly ruin these things by touching them too much.
Yeah.
The fact that you've touched it kind of taints the first one, makes that feel less of a novel idea. Like you actually were more just kind of pull something together versus something that's really intentional. There's a lot of things I think you wish you could have just left it and had more impact. But
it's gone. It's vanished.
I want to wish away with the magic wand all bad cinema etiquette. It's gone. People are no longer talking. People are no longer on their phones. People are no longer rustling. Something happens now when they walk into the cinema with the magic wand. They'll just settle down and they'll just enjoy the film in peace.
Phone ban. Lockers at cinemas. Just put your phone in the locker.
Right. Final question of the show. What is the trick? And I suppose we can answer this. Let's bring it back to you guys and Pulp Kitchen, because you've done an incredible thing of doing this and following your passion. So somebody was to say, what is the trick to either following my passion as film reviewers or as social media podcasters? What would you give them? One piece of advice?
Just find the fun, because if you're going to do it every week, it becomes work, and you don't want it to become a chore. And James and I are people who love watching movies for leisure, and it's great that we now get to do it for work. But there are times when sometimes watching a film now is work, and it's really important that I've learned this after many years, is to try and just I'm going to watch a movie today, and it's not for the show, it's not for anything, it's just for me. And it's remembering to derive pleasure from the things that you enjoy outside of work. Give yourself space for that so you can continue to do your work and also find joy within it.
Do you know what I've said? This has happened to me. I'm doing things that on the outside are very fun.
Yeah.
Go, oh my gosh! But you forget, because you're so in it and you're so wanting it to be right and grow and be amazing. You forget to go, hold on, enjoy the thing.
Yeah, there is a danger that we ruin our favorite hobby.
Yeah.
And it's it's only a couple of times a year we feel obliged to watch a film. But I'm of all the things I'd have to do for work, watching films, having to watch maybe a shit film is kind of a pretty good one. So, and then we do generally, we sound like a married couple. We laugh every day. Podcast, which is a really good something we find.
Not on this one, we haven't much, have we?
It's we're generally just joking about films on screen and off screen all the time, and I think that just makes it easier. It doesn't feel like I'm forced to have a conversation about films we really enjoy.
So what would yours be, James?
I genuinely think consistency trumps quality, which I think is an interesting one. Yes, I think quality does eventually come by being consistent, but especially with podcasting, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't try and make a perfect podcast every week. Don't let good enough. Don't let perfect get in the way of good enough. You can overanalyze and sort of I need to make this so it wasn't perfect. It's there's always next week. Focus on just choosing a day you want to upload and sticking to it. Same with social media and making sure you're consistently doing that. There are many average or even bad creators who are way more successful than you because they are more consistent than you.
Yeah.
It's if you're lucky, you can be consistent and high quality, but I think the non-negotiable is to be consistent.
Fantastic. Guys, great answers. There's been so much in this episode where I've going to re-listen to this and note down all of those recommendations. So thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
Pleasure, Ben. Thanks so much. Thank you.
So there we go. That's James and George from the Pulp Kitchen. Lovely, lovely chat there. And I've been thinking about that over the last week or so. So what were my takeaways now it's all kind of settled in? A couple of things. I'll be honest with you. That Indiana Jones trivia, I've broken that out already a few times. Somebody's mentioned, oh, we're off on holiday to Tunisia. And I'm like, oh, Tunisia, you say? Any excuse. I've broken that one out. Ripley, they mentioned. Me and Bryony have started watching Ripley. We're only about an episode in. But the cinematography is unbelievable so far. So that's what's really surprised me. And do you know what? The main thing I think, reflecting on their journey, was turning up week after week doing a podcast when no one's listening. Which is, if you just think about that for a moment, in any other job, would you turn up for work with no customers, no one to talk to for weeks, months, sometimes years? I heard Joe Rogan did exactly the same. He was going for 3 years before anyone really started listening. And as somebody who's new on that journey, I really needed to hear that. And I was like, wow, that's what you have to do. And that's why Simon Squibb said this to me in episode 1, which we actually edited out at the end, but he challenged me to make 100 episodes. And it's for exactly that reason, that if anyone's asking me, how's the podcast going? I'm going, ask me in 50 to 100 episodes. Let's just keep going and then not even care if anyone's turning up yet. So I thought that was really interesting. And I think that applies to when we start out in anything. Forget who's watching, just keep going, right? So that's kind of cool. What else do I need to say? As always, make sure you hit subscribe. So the next episode is out on Friday, every Friday. And if you do want to share this with anyone that loves films, go on, get that WhatsApp out, ping it in right now and go, hey, you're going to love this. That would mean a lot. Drop me a DM as well. And I've got some thank yous as well. My podcast producer, Bryony, who's also my wife. So thank you. She produces the podcast. Jack from Creator Social. He's doing a brilliant job. And Annika on scheduling as well. So that's it for this week. See you all next week on another episode of What's the Trick?